The sound of the lock clicking shut is final. Not the gentle catch of a bedroom door, but the definitive snick of a deadbolt sliding home, the kind of sound that erases possibility. It echoes through this cramped spare room like a judge's gavel, and I feel my stomach drop into the darkness below. I'm sitting on the floor now, my back pressed against the cold wall, my simple linen dress bunched up around my knees. The room smells of neglect. Dust motes drift through the single window's thin afternoon light, and the air carries that particular staleness of spaces left untouched too long. Old wood, forgotten summers, the ghost of my childhood toys. I need to breathe. Just breathe. You'll stay in there until you apologize to Brielle. Vincent's voice comes through the door, thick with righteous authority. I mean it, Cadence. Think about what you did. What I did. The phrase sits in my chest like a stone, growing heavier by the second. I didn't break the vase. Not the 18th century Satsuma piece that Brielle's been obsessing over for months, the one she points out to anyone who visits, adjusting its position on the mahogany mantel with theatrical care. I'd been in the kitchen when it happened. I heard the crash, the delicate splintering of something irreplaceable, and I rushed in to find my sister-in-law kneeling beside the fragments, her perfectly coiffed dark hair tumbling from its twist, tears streaming down her flawless face. She did it on purpose, she sobbed, pointing a trembling finger at me. Out of jealousy. I tried to stop her, but she was so angry, so envious of my things. Vincent had arrived within moments, his expression already hardening into certainty. He didn't ask questions. He never does. He simply listened to his wife, the woman he'd married 6 months before our parents' funeral, the woman who'd somehow convinced him that I, his sister, his only surviving family, was untrustworthy. Now I'm alone in this spare room that has become my prison, and I feel something harden in my own chest. Not anger exactly, though there's plenty of that. Something colder. Something that's been building for 3 years, ever since Vincent and Brielle maneuvered themselves into control of everything. I pull my knees to my chest, my arms wrapped around my shins, and wait for the sound of Vincent's footsteps to fade. They do, eventually. I can hear the murmur of his voice downstairs, and then Brielle's higher tones. Both of them congratulating themselves on maintaining order, on keeping me in line. In the darkness of this spare room, sitting on the floor of my childhood home, I make a decision. Not in anger. In cold, crystalline clarity. I'm going to burn it all down. Let me tell you about who I am. Or rather, who they've convinced me I am. My name is Cadence Vance, and I'm 24 years old. Though I feel ancient. The aging started 5 years ago, on a Tuesday afternoon in March, when a state trooper came to our door with the kind of expression that changes everything. The car accident had been quick, they said. Painless. As if those details mattered. As if they changed the fact that my parents were gone. That the solid ground of my life had transformed into something unstable and hostile overnight. My father was a quiet man, a botanist who tended to his research with more passion than he'd ever shown toward anything else. But he loved the land. That particular plot of unmarked, undeveloped acreage outside the city fascinated him for reasons he'd never quite explained. He'd purchased it 30 years earlier, a wild tangle of marsh and oak, and left it to me in his will. Keep it, he'd written in the letter I found among his papers. It will be worth something someday. Trust me. My mother left me other things, jewelry mostly, a few paintings, books filled with her handwritten notes in the margins. All precious. All irreplaceable. But Vincent, as the eldest child and executor of the estate, inherited the house. And with it, he inherited a peculiar sense of entitlement. The first year after the funeral, I was so hollowed out by grief that I barely noticed when Vincent and Brielle claimed the master bedroom. I barely registered that they'd started charging me rent to live in what had been my childhood home. I was too busy staring at photographs of my father, too numb to notice that my mother's paintings were being replaced with Brielle's minimalist art acquisitions. By the time I understood what was happening, the patterns were already set in stone. Vincent controlled my inheritance, the modest trust my parents had set up, claiming I was too artistic, too impractical, too fragile to handle money. Brielle controlled everything else, the social dynamics of the house, the narratives about my worth, the constant, subtle erosion of my self-esteem. Your clothes are so bohemian, sweetie, she'd say, her voice dripping with faux concern. I'm only trying to help. You'd be so much prettier if you'd just try a little harder. Your little art projects are so quaint, she'd murmur at dinner parties. Of course, none of us are really making money at that level, but it's sweet that you're trying. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Vincent believed every word of it. By the time I was locked in this spare room on that afternoon in March, exactly 1 year after I'd moved back into the house following a brief, failed attempt at independence, I had worn the weight of their contempt for so long that it felt like my natural state. Like the way I was meant to exist. But sitting in the darkness, with the lock clicking behind me like a full stop, something shifts. I wait until midnight. I sit motionless on the old twin bed they've moved into the spare room, the one with the slightly broken spring and the thin mattress, and listen to the house settle into sleep. The creaks and groans become rhythmic. The light beneath my door eventually goes dark. Only then do I move. From the hidden pocket in my backpack, a pocket I'd sewn myself, deliberately small and obscure, I withdraw a slim burner phone. The phone they don't know about. The phone that connects to a world they can't touch. My fingers move with practiced ease, typing out a message in code. Phoenix, 7, code black. Can't reach server. Set preload sequence 4, T-7 days. The response comes within 30 seconds. Leo doesn't waste time on shock or questions. Cadence. You good? Core needs the patch yesterday. That full lockdown will crater the system. I can't execute without your authorization. I stare at his message, my heart pounding against my ribs. The security update isn't minor. The Phoenix Core, the sophisticated software infrastructure that runs the entire Phoenix logistics network, is vulnerable to a critical flaw. The patch is scheduled for 8 p.m. If it doesn't install, the system will trigger an automatic emergency lockdown, designed to protect client data at any cost. It's designed to devastate. Comply, I type back. And then I hit send. Leo's silence that follows is heavy with understanding. I've just given him permission to do something irreversible. I've just set a clock running that can't be stopped. Now let me tell you the secret they don't know. The secret that changes everything. I never planned to be a billionaire in hiding. It simply happened, the way extraordinary things sometimes do, through a combination of timing, talent, and the kind of luck that only appears when you're willing to work 16-hour days alone in your apartment while your family sleeps. I was 19 when I started coding in earnest. A sophomore at university, already disillusioned with the traditional computer science program, I began building something just for myself. A security system. A way to manage complex logistics networks using layers of encryption and authorization protocols that I designed from the ground up. It was beautiful in its way. Elegant. Efficient. When Phoenix Logistics approached me 6 years ago, offering to license my system for their growing business, I was $38 million in debt, buried under student loans and living in a studio apartment in the city. They offered me $3 million upfront, plus licensing fees in perpetuity. I signed the contract without telling a soul. Not Vincent. Certainly not Brielle. I built a separate life, kept a separate apartment, opened accounts in a business name so obscure that only someone with my specific knowledge of tech infrastructure could trace it back to me. The money accumulated quietly. Steadily. I invested wisely, watched my wealth multiply, and never ever used it. It was my secret. My insurance policy. My proof that I was more than what they told me I was. Phoenix Logistics grew into a monster of a company. Thousands of vendors use their system now. Brielle's little boutique, Aurea Lux, is one of thousands of small operations that depends entirely on my code for inventory management and payment processing. Brielle has no idea. Neither does Vincent. Neither of them know that I'm the person keeping their entire world running on systems I built with my own 2 hands. And now, sitting in a locked room in the middle of the night, I'm going to use that secret to burn it all down. The morning Vincent unlocks the door, his expression is stern. Disappointed. The look of a man who believes he's being generous. You're free to leave the room, he says, shoving a glass of stale water and a piece of paper at me. But you haven't earned forgiveness. Brielle is devastated. To make this right, you're going to sell that useless land Dad left you. She needs the money for inventory. It's time you contributed to this family instead of being a burden. The land. Of course. I take the transfer papers with shaking hands. The document is already prepared, just waiting for my signature. All I have to do is sign, and the deed transfers to Vincent. He'll sell it, probably for the appraised value of $20,000, and Brielle will use that money to prop up her failing boutique. But I know something they don't. 5 years ago, shortly after my father's death, I received an encrypted email from one of his old colleagues. A botanist, the man wrote, sometimes purchased land for reasons that went deeper than surface value. Had I checked the geological surveys? Had I looked at the infrastructure proposals the city had filed? I had, eventually. And I discovered that my father's seemingly worthless swampland sits directly in the path of the proposed State Highway Authority bypass project. The project that's still in preliminary stages, still under the radar of public knowledge, but scheduled to move forward within 18 months. That land will be worth $200,000 to the state. Maybe more. I've known it for 3 years and have said nothing. I let them believe I was helpless, that I owned nothing of value, that I was completely dependent on their charity. Now, looking at the transfer papers, I make a choice. No, I say quietly. Vincent's face goes red. What do you mean, no? I mean I'm not signing it. I set the papers down on the table between us. But I wrote an apology. I'm ready to give it to Brielle. That seems to satisfy him in a way that outright defiance never would. He leaves the room to fetch Brielle, convinced that I'm finally learning my place. What he doesn't know is that I've written 2 documents on that scrap of paper. The first is the apology, something so saccharine and self-abasing that Brielle will practically glow with satisfaction. It's a masterpiece of manipulation, designed to make my sister-in-law feel completely victorious. I've poured every ounce of my acting ability into those words. But at the end, I've added one small phrase. I hope your current inventory is secured from all external 7 threats. The 7 is a code. Leo will understand immediately. It means, activate Security Protocol 7. It means, start the countdown. It means, begin the endgame. When Vincent returns with Brielle, his wife's face is radiant with triumph. She accepts the apology as her due, reading it aloud to Vincent with theatrical delight, never noticing the small coded sentence at the very end. The moment I hand over that piece of paper, I set in motion a series of events that will unfold across 7 days. That night, I leave the house and drive to the modest apartment I've maintained for years in the city. It's sparse, a bedroom, a small kitchen, and one room that I've converted into my nerve center. Servers hum quietly in specially controlled cabinets. Security systems run 24 hours a day. This is where the real me lives. I pull up the master service contract that all Phoenix logistics vendors are required to sign. The document is dense, technical, filled with security protocols and terms of service. But Clause 4.b is the critical one. I wrote it myself years ago, when Phoenix Logistics was just a small company needing legal protections. Unauthorized external network access, including logging in from unsecured personal devices, voids the service agreement and triggers an automatic, unappealable system-wide account lockdown for network security compliance. I drafted it to protect clients. It was a good clause. A necessary one. Brielle has been violating it every single day. I pull up my network monitoring tools, sophisticated software I designed specifically to track system usage patterns, and begin to compile evidence. I work through the night, documenting every instance of unauthorized access. Brielle logging in from the coffee shop down the street. Brielle accessing the system from a public library computer. Brielle using her personal smartphone from places that leave her completely vulnerable to security breaches. The violations are numerous, flagrant, willful, and completely, legally documented. By dawn, I have compiled 217 instances of unauthorized access. I have screenshots, timestamps, IP addresses, everything a court would ever need. I send the complete file to Leo with a single message: begin the countdown. We strike Saturday at 7 p.m. It's time. Leo's response is immediate: I'm ready when you are. This is going to be biblical. I allow myself a small smile. It's the first genuine smile I've smiled in 3 years. The week that follows is strange. Surreal. I return to the house and watch as my family moves through their lives, completely unaware that they're walking toward a cliff. Brielle, convinced that the land sale is imminent, begins spending money with reckless abandon. I see it all over social media, posts of new designer bags, expensive dinners at exclusive restaurants, a massive shipment of jewelry arriving at the house from overseas suppliers. Brielle is so convinced of her victory that she can't help bragging about it. Vincent seems smugly satisfied. He'd solved the cadence problem, he thinks. He'd forced me to capitulate. He'd proven his authority. Neither of them notices when I quietly sell the land to the State Highway Authority on Wednesday afternoon. The transaction takes place via encrypted communication with the agency's representative, and the certified check, $220,000, is deposited into an account they can never trace. I own my freedom now. I've always owned it. They simply didn't know. Thursday evening, Brielle mentions the party. We're celebrating your promotion, she says to Vincent, her voice dripping with affection that I recognize as calculated performance. And my new Aria Luxe inventory launch. It's going to be fabulous. You'll help with the catering, won't you, Cadence? It's the least you can do after everything. I smile and say nothing. I'm thinking about Saturday at 7 p.m. I'm thinking about the moment when everything changes. The house is transformed. I barely recognize it when I arrive Saturday evening with catering supplies. Brielle's hired decorators, strings of lights, fresh flowers, a carefully curated aesthetic that screams money and taste. The guest list is A-level, Vincent's business associates, their wives, Brielle's high society friends. Everyone who matters in their small, carefully constructed world. Brielle forces me into an apron. Just help in the background, she says with that patented smile that never reaches her eyes. No one needs to see you. Just make sure the drinks stay full. Try not to embarrass me. For 6 hours, I move through my childhood home like a ghost. I pass champagne flutes and appetizers. I smile when guests pat my head like I'm a well-meaning pet. I watch as Brielle works the room in a stunning emerald gown, collecting compliments and admiration. She tells someone I'm helping out tonight. She makes it sound like charity. Like she's doing me a favor by letting me serve at her party. I can feel the old version of me, the helpless girl, the burden, rising up inside me, wanting to believe that this is all I'll ever be. But I push her down. I've made a decision, and I'm going to see it through. By 6:55 p.m., I've positioned myself in the corner of the main living room. I stand behind a potted plant, nearly invisible, watching as Brielle begins her grand presentation. A massive screen has been installed on the wall, state-of-the-art, linked directly to the Phoenix Logistics inventory system. She's showing off her new jewelry collection to a crowd of enthralled guests, gesturing dramatically at images that display across the massive display. This is only the beginning, Brielle says, her voice full of confidence and anticipation. The new direction for Aria Luxe. Luxury. Exclusivity. The best of everything. I look at my phone. 6:59 p.m. My hands are steady now. Calm. I'm not nervous anymore. I know exactly what I'm about to do, and I'm at peace with it. I open a secure app and type a single word, execute. At precisely 7 p.m., the screen goes dark. For a moment, there is silence. Brielle continues speaking, not realizing the equipment has failed. The guests exchange confused glances. Then the screen comes alive again. Not with jewelry. Not with images of luxury goods. But with a massive red digital shield and a message that appears in stark white lettering. System lockdown initiated. Unauthorized access detected. All accounts frozen. Network access suspended. For security compliance. Brielle's voice dies mid-sentence. She stares at the screen, her perfectly made-up face going pale. I watch as reality crashes into her like a wave. What is this? Her voice is small. Uncertain. Everything the confident entrepreneur is not. Vincent's phone begins ringing. Then again. Then again. I watch as he looks at the screen, his face going white, then red, then white again. His hand reaches for his laptop, fumbling, desperate. I watch as understanding crashes over him like a tidal wave. "My portal," he whispers. "Everything's locked. The whole firm's system. All the client data." He stumbles backward, his drink falling, the glass shattering against the marble floor. The sound seems to shock everyone into motion. Guests begin murmuring. Someone asks if there's a power issue. Someone else starts making phone calls. In the chaos, I step out from behind the potted plant. I remove my apron slowly, deliberately, and set it aside. Every eye gradually turns toward me. The room seems to hold its breath. I walk to the center of the room. "Hello," I say quietly. My voice is soft but clear, cutting through the confusion like a blade. "My name is Cadence Vance, and I need to tell you all who I actually am." Vincent points a shaking finger at me. "You did this. You hacked the system. You ruined everything." I meet his gaze without flinching. In this moment, standing in the center of my childhood home, surrounded by the trappings of a success built on lies, I feel something crystallize inside me. Not anger. Something deeper. Something true. "It wasn't a hack," I say calmly. "And it wasn't a crime. It was the execution of a service agreement that your wife violated repeatedly and systematically." I pull out a tablet from my bag and walk to the blank screen. With a few taps, the red shield reappears, but now it's accompanied by a detailed breakdown of violations. IP addresses, timestamps, locations. Every single instance of unauthorized access, documented with perfect precision. Clause 4.b of the Phoenix Logistics Service Agreement states clearly that unauthorized external network access voids the service agreement and triggers automatic account lockdown for network security compliance. I continue, my voice steady and professional. The voice of someone who knows exactly what they're talking about. Brielle violated this clause 217 times over the past 6 months. A coffee shop here. A public library there. Her personal phone. Unsecured devices from a variety of public locations. I turn to face Brielle directly. "You weren't just breaking the terms of service. You were compromising the security of thousands of vendors and clients. My software detected the breach, traced it to your account, and locked down your access automatically to protect everyone else's data." Brielle's face has gone ashen. You can't. I didn't know." "Yes, you did," I say quietly. "The terms were in the contract you signed. Twice. Once when you opened your account, and again when you updated it last year." I look at Vincent. I watch him as understanding begins to dawn. "Your firm used some of Phoenix Logistics' back-end infrastructure. Protocol 7 didn't care who you were. It traced the security breach back to its source and locked down every related account. Including yours." Mr. Davenport, Vincent's biggest client and the man who runs the wealth management firm, has gone very still. His expression is unreadable. "I think," Mr. Davenport says carefully, "that we need to understand exactly what just happened here." I nod. I've been expecting this moment. I've been preparing for it for 7 days. "I am the founder and CEO of Phoenix Software Corporation," I say, my voice clear and authoritative. "I designed the Phoenix core infrastructure that manages this entire logistics network. I am the person responsible for the security protocols that just activated." The room erupts. Whispers explode across the space like a fire spreading. Brielle makes a small, wounded sound, and Vincent looks as though someone has kicked him in the stomach. I continue, speaking over the noise with calm authority. "Everything you just witnessed was not punishment. It was the automatic execution of security protocols designed to protect client data. Brielle's violations were so severe, and so numerous, that the system locked her out and temporarily suspended her entire account." I pause, letting my gaze sweep across the crowd. Aurea Lux is now in violation of the service agreement. The business is suspended pending a review of the security breach and the terms of remediation. "How long?" Vincent's voice is hoarse. "How long will it be suspended?" I meet his eyes. I can see the fear in them now. The realization that he's not the one in control anymore. That depends on whether we decide to let her back in at all, I say. The party disintegrates within 20 minutes. Mr. Davenport is already on his phone, calling his legal team. Other clients are following suit. The high society crowd that was so eager to celebrate Brielle's success suddenly can't leave fast enough, afraid perhaps that association with scandal might taint them. I watch as they file out, their conversations a hushed mixture of shock and judgment. I watch as Brielle retreats to the kitchen, where I can hear her desperately trying to reach her suppliers. Vincent sits in one of the living room chairs, looking like someone has removed his skeleton. "You never told us," he says numbly. "All this time you were the person who built Phoenix Logistics?" "Yes," I say simply. I'm still standing, my simple dress somehow seeming elegant now, as though I've been transformed by the speaking of truth. "I built it. I licensed it. And I've been watching it grow for 6 years while you told me I was worthless." "I don't understand," Vincent says. "If you had all this money, why did you stay here? Why did you let us treat you like garbage?" I finish. Because I needed to understand something first. I needed to understand that I was allowing it. That I was accepting your narrative about who I was because somewhere, I'd started to believe it. I sit down across from him, and for the first time in years, I feel the weight lifting. Not all of it, that will take time, but enough that I can breathe. Enough that I can speak my truth without apology. My father left me that land because he knew it would be valuable someday, I say quietly. He left me my mother's things. He left me this house, in a way, the memory of it, the love that was built here. And you know what I realized sitting in that locked room? I realized that nothing he left me, nothing I'd built for myself, meant anything as long as I was still living in your shadow. As long as I was still accepting the version of myself that you and Brielle created. Vincent doesn't answer. He looks hollowed out. Destroyed. And I'm amazed to find that I don't feel satisfaction in that. I don't feel joy. What I feel is sadness. Sadness for who he could have been if he'd believed in me instead of in Brielle's lies. "I sold the land," I tell him. "Not to you. To the State Highway Authority. For $220,000. 5 days ago." His face goes white. "You didn't." "I did," I say. "And they wired me a certified check. I have been waiting for this moment for 3 years, Vincent. I was patient. I was strategic. And now it's over." The next morning, I leave the house for the last time. I don't take much, just my backpack, the burner phone, a few of my mother's things that I manage to grab before the chaos becomes complete. I drive to my apartment in the city and lock the door behind me. By Monday, the news has broken on financial websites. Phoenix Logistics implements emergency lockdown on major vendor account due to security breach. The story ripples through the business community like a stone thrown into still water. By Tuesday, I'm fielding calls from lawyers, journalists, and other vendors who want to understand what happened. I give carefully worded statements about security protocols and the importance of data protection. I don't mention Vincent or Brielle by name. By Wednesday, Vincent has been fired. The firm can't afford to employ someone whose family created such a massive security vulnerability. By Thursday, Brielle's suppliers have all frozen her accounts. By Friday, the bank has issued a notice of foreclosure on the house. Without my land money, without any income, they can't afford the mortgage. Within 2 weeks, Vincent and Brielle are gone. They moved to a small apartment on the other side of the city, both of them unemployed, both of them toxic in their social circles. The house is seized by the bank and put on the market. I don't watch it happen. I'm too busy with other things. I go to my lawyer and begin the process of taking back control of my inheritance. The trust fund that Vincent managed so carefully is transferred to me, along with interest and penalties for mismanagement. I hire an accountant to review all of Brielle's financial claims and determine that they owe me nearly $30,000 in back rent that I could have charged them but didn't. I restore Phoenix Logistics to full operational status. Brielle's account remains suspended, but other vendors are brought back online. The incident becomes a case study in cybersecurity excellence. Universities begin teaching my protocols in their computer science programs. And I make a choice. I sell my apartment in the city. I take the Phoenix Software dividend, over $4 million that quarter alone, and I buy a house of my own. Not the childhood home, which holds too many ghosts, but a sprawling Victorian on the outskirts of the city, with a library and an office and room enough for servers and peace. I hire Leo full-time as my chief technology officer. We begin expanding Phoenix Software, not just maintaining existing infrastructure but building new systems, new solutions, new tools for companies that need security and sophistication. 6 months after the party, I'm featured in a technology magazine. The article is titled, "From Invisible to Indispensable: How One Developer Built a Digital Empire." I read it in my home office, surrounded by the hum of servers and the evidence of my own brilliance, and I smile. On the 1-year anniversary of the party, I receive a letter. It comes to my office, forwarded through my legal team. The handwriting is familiar. I recognize Vincent's careful script, but it looks shakier than I remember. As though his hands have aged significantly in just 12 months. Dear Cadence, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. But I felt I owed you an explanation for what happened. Or maybe an apology. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. I spent our whole lives telling you who you were. I told you that you were impractical, that you were fragile, that you needed guidance. I told you that I was protecting you when I was really controlling you. And the worst part is that I believed it. I actually believed I was being kind. Brielle was easier to blame, and I have blamed her. But the truth is that I made the choice to listen to her instead of you. I made the choice to lock you in that room. I made the choice to demand that you sell your inheritance. I made every choice that led to my own destruction, and I've had a lot of time to think about that. I don't expect this to change anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. That I see what I did. That I'm sorry. I've read about your company. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. Vincent. I set the letter down on my desk and look out my office window at the city sprawling below. The morning sun catches the glass buildings, and they glow like beacons of possibility. Somewhere out there, people are using my code. Businesses are running because I built the infrastructure for them to run on. I am essential. I am brilliant. I am exactly who my father always believed I could be. I think about Vincent, alone in his small apartment, working a job that barely pays the rent. I think about Brielle, forced to confront the reality of her own mediocrity. I think about the girl locked in the spare room, the girl who believed their narratives, the girl who felt helpless. That girl is gone. Transformed. Remade. I pick up my pen and write a response. Vincent. I read your apology. I accept it. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger has never been where my power lay. My power is in the code I write. In the systems I build. In the quiet, relentless refusal to be anything less than extraordinary. I hope you find peace. Not because I'm trying to be kind, but because you deserve to understand what you did and why. That understanding is its own form of justice. I wish you well. Cadence. I seal the envelope and send it out into the world. They call me the Code Queen now. The genius who built an empire from nothing. The woman who destroyed her enemies with intelligence and precision. But that's not who I am. I'm the girl my father believed in when no one else did. I'm the daughter of a botanist who knew that sometimes, the most worthless-looking things hold the most potential. I'm the sister my mother would have been proud of. I'm the woman who learned that my greatest power wasn't in revenge. It was in the quiet, unstoppable refusal to accept someone else's version of my worth. I'm the architect of systems that protect thousands of businesses every single day. I'm the CEO of a company that's changing the landscape of digital security. I'm the person who took the shame they tried to heap on me and transformed it into code. I'm Cadence Vance. And I'm just getting started. Every morning, I wake up in my Victorian house, surrounded by the quiet hum of servers and the evidence of my own brilliance. I pour my coffee, black, no sugar, and I sit down at my desk. And I write code. Beautiful, elegant, unstoppable code. Code that protects. Code that builds. Code that changes the world. The girl they locked in a spare room is gone. But the woman she became? The woman who was building an empire all along? She's just beginning to shine. OMG, if you made it this far, you get it. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't tied to my brother's cruel grounding, or my sister-in-law calling me hopeless. My story proves that being quiet was actually my weapon. I built Phoenix Software and used my own code, legally, to lock them right out of the fancy lives they used to run. If this story hit you in the feels, share it with anyone who's been gaslit and made to feel invisible. Tell them, having boundaries doesn't make you difficult. My brother and sister-in-law thought they were stealing my worthless swampland, but my secret technical genius turned their entire world into a giant, unappealable system crash. LOL. You write your own ending, seriously. My worth was never a question, it was just waiting for me to remember it. Have you ever had to prove your worth to family who totally underestimated you? Spill the tea and share your story below.